On the surface, Dena Collins' life looked like the kind of American dream that people posted about on social media with carefully chosen filters and cheerful captions. Her two-story home in a quiet Illinois suburb had a white fence, blooming rose bushes, and a porch swing where neighbors often saw her sipping iced tea in the evenings. She had a stable marriage to Mark, a dependable insurance agent who provided well and kept their household steady. Friends described him as the perfect couple. But behind the neat curtains and the freshly mowed lawn, Dena carried a secret dissatisfaction she barely admitted even to herself. At 33, she felt her life had turned into an endless loop. Wake up, prepare breakfast, handle chores, run errands, wait for Mark to return late from the office, and then listen to him mumble about clients before he drifted to sleep with the TV humming in the background. She told herself she should be grateful. Many women would envy her stability, but gratitude didn't silence the gnawing hunger inside her for excitement, for passion, for something unpredictable. The first crack appeared at a local charity gala hosted by the town community center, an event Dena had almost skipped. She wore a crimson dress that hugged her figure, more daring than anything she had chosen in years. That night, she felt different, alive, seen, and that was when she met Ethan Hayes. Ethan was new in town, a real estate developer with striking confidence. He carried himself with ease, his dark suit perfectly tailored, his smile effortlessly charming. Unlike Mark, whose conversations often revolve around numbers and policy paperwork, Ethan spoke with wit, asking Dena questions that made her laugh and lean closer. He offered her champagne, complimented her dress without hesitation, and in his eyes she saw something Mark no longer showed her: desire. By the end of the evening, Ethan slipped his business card into her hand. His fingers lingered just a little too long, his grin daring her to use it. Dena tucked the card into her clutch, her heart pounding as if she were already doing something forbidden. When she returned home past midnight, Mark was asleep on the couch, the glow of the television flickering across his tired face. She stood there for a long moment, watching him, a pang of guilt pressing on her chest. He had been faithful, loyal, and steady for nearly 10 years. Yet when she reached into her purse later that night and touched the sharp edge of Ethan's business card, the guilt melted into something else: thrill. Dena slipped the card into her nightstand drawer, telling herself it was harmless to keep it. But deep down, she already knew something had shifted. The cracks in her perfect marriage were no longer invisible. And soon, she would step into a world from which there would be no return. For days after the gala, Dena tried to go back to her routine. She folded laundry, organized the pantry, watered the flowers out front, and scrolled through her phone while sipping coffee at the kitchen table. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside her head, Ethan's face appeared again and again, his voice echoing in moments of silence. She told herself it was ridiculous. She was married. She was supposed to ignore these impulses, to crumple up his card and toss it in the trash. Several times, she opened the drawer, pulled out the sleek rectangle of paper, and hovered over the garbage can. Each time, she hesitated. The card went back into the drawer. On a Wednesday afternoon, when Mark was at the office and the house was quiet, Dena finally gave in. She picked up her phone, her hand trembling, and dialed a number. The line rang once, twice, and then Ethan Hayes came the smooth, confident voice. Dena's throat tightened. She almost hung up, but instead she whispered, "It's Dena, from the gala." There was a pause, and then his voice softened, almost playful. "I was hoping you'd call." That sentence was enough to unravel her carefully built defenses. Within minutes, he had convinced her to meet him for coffee downtown. He made it sound harmless, just two acquaintances catching up. Dena agreed, though her pulse was racing like she had just committed a crime. The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a florist, the kind of place no one from her neighborhood would likely visit. Ethan was already there, leaning casually against the counter, and when he saw her, his eyes lit up. The conversation flowed effortlessly, sprinkled with laughter and the kind of attention she had been starving for. Mark never looked at her this way anymore, like she was the most fascinating person in the room. One meeting turned into 2, then 3. By the end of the month, coffee had become a convenient cover for something deeper. Their touches grew bolder. his hand brushing against hers. His fingers grazed at her arm as he leaned closer. She told herself she could stop any time. She told herself this wasn't truly cheating. Not yet, but late one Friday night, while Mark snored softly in their bedroom, Dena slipped into the bathroom and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her lips still tasted faintly of Ethan's kiss. Her stomach flipped as guilt and excitement tangled together, impossible to separate. That night, as she crawled back into bed, she realized the truth. She had already crossed a line. Maybe not in the physical sense. Not fully, but in her heart, she had betrayed Mark. And now that the door was open, she wasn't sure she could close it again. By the time autumn rolled into Maplewood Drive, Dena's double life had already taken root. What started as innocent coffee breaks and stolen glances had transformed into something far more dangerous. Lunches stretched into late afternoons, and errands became code for hotel rooms tucked away on the edge of the city. With every meeting, Dena felt herself slipping deeper into a world she both craved and feared. Ethan was intoxicating, his charm, his energy, the way he seemed to see her not as a wife trapped in routine, but as a woman full of fire. With him, she laughed louder, breathed easier, lived bolder. But with each kiss, each whispered promise, the weight of her lies grew heavier. At home, Mark noticed the changes but misread them. He saw her new dresses, her sudden interest in fitness classes, the way her eyes sparkled, and thought she was simply rediscovering herself. "You look amazing lately," he said one evening as he loosened his tie. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." Dena forced a smile, kissed his cheek, and turned away quickly before he could see the guilt flash across her face. To cover her tracks, she invented stories. She told Mark she had joined a women's book club that met twice a week. Sometimes she mentioned helping a neighbor with errands, other times a yoga class. Her lies were delivered so smoothly that even she began to believe them. But there were close calls. One evening, as she was washing dishes, Mark pulled a crumpled receipt from the counter. "What's this?" he asked. It was from an upscale Italian restaurant. On a night, she had claimed she was with a book club. Dena froze for half a second, then forced out a laugh. "Oh, that? Sarah insisted on taking us out. She said we needed to treat ourselves instead of always meeting in someone's living room." Mark eyed her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Makes sense." He kissed her forehead and left the room. Dena let out a shaky breath, her hands gripping the sink. That had been too close. But instead of stopping, she doubled down. She couldn't resist Ethan's texts, his late-night calls, the way he made her feel alive. She told herself she could balance both worlds, be the perfect wife at home and the passionate lover in secret. What she didn't realize was that every lie she told was another thread in a web she was weaving around herself. And webs, no matter how carefully built, eventually unravel. Ethan was no longer satisfied with brief encounters. For him, stolen afternoons and hurried kisses weren't enough. He wanted more of her, whole weekends, nights without excuses, mornings where she didn't rush away to play the role of dutiful wife. One evening, after a lingering dinner in his condo overlooking the Chicago skyline, Ethan leaned against a glass window, a glass of wine in his hand, and said, "Dena, I don't want to be the man you sneak away to. I want to be the man you come home to. Leave him. Be with me." His words struck her like a lightning bolt. The idea had danced in her imagination before, in quiet moments when she lay in bed next to Mark, staring at the ceiling. But hearing it spoken aloud, so boldly, so directly, terrified her. "I can't just walk away from everything," she said, her voice trembling. "Mark, my life, people would never understand." Ethan stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. "You deserve more than living half a life. You deserve to be with someone who sees you, who wants you every second. Don't you see? We could start over. No lies, no sneaking around. Just us." Dena's heart raced. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to imagine a new life filled with passion, with fire, with someone who made her feel alive again. But the thought of destroying her marriage, of shattering the image she had built in her community, made her hesitate. Around the same time, Mark, perhaps sensing the distance between them, surprised her with something unexpected. One Friday evening, he came home early with a bouquet of lilies. her favorite. "Pack a bag," he said, smiling shyly. "We're going to the lake for the weekend. Just us." At first, Dena was stunned. It had been years since Mark had planned something spontaneous. They drove up to a quiet cabin near Lake Michigan, where the air smelled of pine and the water glistened under the autumn sun. As they walked hand in hand along the shore, Mark admitted, "I know I've been distracted with work. I know I haven't given you the attention you deserve. But I don't want to lose what we have. You mean everything to me, Dena." His words pierced her like a knife. That night, lying beside him in the cabin, she stared at the ceiling, torn apart by guilt. Mark was trying. He was offering her the stability and loyalty she once swore she wanted. Yet her heart throbbed with longing for Ethan. While Mark slept peacefully, she slipped into the bathroom with her phone. Her fingers moved almost without thought as she typed, "I wish I were with you tonight." She sent the message before she could stop herself. As she returned to bed, she knew she was standing at a crossroads. One path led back to safety and routine. The other promised danger, passion, and freedom, but also destruction. And for the first time, Dena wasn't sure which path she wanted more. By November, the chill of winter had settled over the suburbs, and with it came the first visible cracks in Dena's carefully maintained mask. The double life she had built demanded constant vigilance, remembering lies, covering tracks, keeping stories consistent. But the more time she spent with Ethan, the more careless she became. It started with small things. She came home one evening with perfume lingering on her neck, a scent Mark didn't recognize. "New fragrance?" he asked casually. Dena smiled too quickly. "Just something I sampled at the mall," she replied, turning away before he could study her expression. Another time, she accidentally left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. A message from Ethan lit up the screen. "Can't stop thinking about you." She snatched it up just as Mark entered the room, her heart pounding, her palms slick with sweat. He hadn't noticed, but the near miss haunted her all night. Mark wasn't blind. He noticed her sudden absences, the way she guarded her phone, the late-night book club meetings that left her glowing in ways he couldn't explain. Doubt crept into his mind, though he pushed it away with excuses. He told himself she was simply finding new hobbies, rediscovering herself, maybe even preparing some kind of surprise. But in the quiet moments, unease gnawed at him. Meanwhile, Ethan's impatience grew. "You can't keep living two lives, Dena," he told her during one of their secret afternoons together. "Sooner or later, he'll figure out. Don't you want to be free of all this sneaking around?" His words lingered in her mind even as she sat at the dinner table with Mark, nodding as he talked about a difficult client. She felt like a stranger in her own home, an actress reciting lines in a play she no longer wanted to perform. Yet every time she thought about confessing, fear paralyzed her. Then came the night Mark made her favorite dinner: grilled salmon with lemon butter, roasted vegetables, and a bottle of Chardonnay. As they ate, he reached across the table, holding her hand with unusual tenderness. "Dena," he said quietly, "are you happy?" Her fork froze midway to her mouth. "Of course," she lied, forcing a smile. But Mark's eyes searched hers with an intensity that made her squirm. "I just feel like you're somewhere else lately. With someone else." The words hit her like a slap. For a moment, she thought he knew everything. Her chest tightened, her pulse racing. But then he looked down, shaking his head as if dismissing his own suspicion. "Forget it. Maybe I'm just imagining things." That night, when Mark fell asleep beside her, Dena lay awake staring into the dark. She realized that the walls were closing in. No matter how carefully she lied, no matter how well she played the role of the perfect wife, the truth was beginning to leak through the cracks. And if she didn't choose soon between loyalty and passion, safety and freedom, someone else would make the choice for her. Winter deepened, and with it, the tension inside the Collins household grew thicker than the frost on the windows. Mark had always been trusting, almost to a fault, but now doubt shadowed his every glance. He noticed the way Dena kept her phone glued to her side, the sudden text alert she quickly silenced, the way she seemed distracted even when they sat together in the same room. At first, he tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was stressed, maybe she had personal projects she didn't want to share yet. But one night, when she slipped out under the excuse of a late book club meeting, Mark decided to test her story. He called the neighbor who was supposedly hosting the gathering. The woman sounded puzzled. Book club? Oh no, we haven't met in weeks. Everyone's too busy with the holidays. Mark's hand tightened around the phone. A chill spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the cold weather outside. When Dena returned hours later, her cheeks flushed and her smile faintly glowing. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he studied her carefully, filing away every detail. He wasn't a man given to rash decisions. He preferred to gather evidence, to know the truth beyond any doubt before acting. Meanwhile, Dena felt the shift in the air, but chose to ignore it. Ethan's pull on her was stronger than ever. He spoke of a future together, painting vivid pictures of weekend trips, shared apartments, mornings filled with laughter instead of silence. And in those moments, she wanted to believe him. She wanted to abandon the weight of her double life and run headlong into his arms. But whenever she considered telling Mark, fear rose like a wall. Divorce meant shame, whispers from neighbors, questions from her family. Worse, it meant confronting the fact that she had destroyed something she once promised to protect. One evening, as she slipped into bed beside Mark, he asked softly, "Do you love me, Dena?" Her breath caught. She turned her head to meet his gaze, but his eyes were shadowed with something between hurt and suspicion. She forced a smile. "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" Mark didn't answer right away. He simply rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling, his jaw clenched. Dena lay awake beside him, her heart hammering, the lies still burning on her tongue. The next morning, while she showered, Mark quietly picked up her phone from the nightstand. The screen was locked, but the endless stream of notifications buzzing against the glass told him enough. He put it back carefully before she stepped out, his decision forming like ice settling over water. Dena thought she was still in control of her secrets. What she didn't know was that Mark had already begun pulling at the threads of her lies. And once a thread is tugged, the whole fabric eventually unravels. Mark Collins was a patient man by nature, but patience has limits. Over the weeks, his quiet suspicions hardened into certainty. The late nights, the lies about book club, the secretive phone habits. It all added up. He didn't have every detail yet, but his gut screamed the truth. His wife was betraying him. Instead of confronting her immediately, Mark decided to watch, to wait. He began leaving the office earlier than usual without telling Dena, parking his car a few streets away and observing. More than once, he saw her dressed elegantly, stepping into Ethan's expensive car. The sight carved deep wounds into his heart, but he forced himself to stay calm. He needed proof, undeniable proof, before he acted. Dena, meanwhile, lived in a haze of reckless passion and gnawing anxiety. Ethan was pressing harder than ever. "Mark doesn't deserve you," he insisted during one of their afternoons together. "Why keep pretending? Leave him. Be with me. We'll make it official." Her chest tightened every time he said it. She wanted to say yes, to run from the suffocating walls of her home and embrace a future of freedom. But when she thought of Mark, loyal, steady, the man who once held her through every storm, her courage faltered. She was caught between two worlds, each tearing her apart. The tension reached a breaking point one snowy December evening. Dena returned home later than usual, cheeks flushed, her hair slightly undone. Mark sat at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee in front of him. The silence in the room was heavier than any words. "You've been out late a lot," he said finally, his voice calm but edged with steel. Dena's heart skipped. "Book club," she answered automatically, avoiding his eyes. Mark leaned back, studying her. "Funny, I spoke to Linda next door. She says the book club hasn't met in months." The blood drained from Dena's face. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she realized her carefully woven lies were collapsing around her. Mark didn't push further. Not yet. He simply stood, his eyes filled with quiet fury. "I need the truth, Dena. Soon, because I already know more than you think." When he left the room, the silence that followed was unbearable. Dena clutched the edge of the counter, her body trembling. She knew the confrontation she had dreaded was no longer avoidable. The walls of her double life were closing in, and soon there would be nowhere left to hide. The snow outside fell silently, covering Maplewood Drive in a pristine white layer. Inside, the Collins household was anything but peaceful. Dena paced nervously, her phone tucked into her pocket, glancing at it every few seconds. She knew Mark had grown suspicious, and every stolen glance toward the door made her heart hammer like a drum. Mark returned home earlier than expected that evening, his expression unreadable. He didn't greet her, didn't ask how her day was. Instead, he held a small envelope in his hand. Dena's stomach twisted. She recognized the handwriting. It was hers. Her heart stopped. "What's this?" Mark asked, his voice low and steady. Dena froze. It was a restaurant receipt from Ethan's favorite Italian place, accidentally left on the kitchen counter days before. Her mind scrambled for an excuse, a lie, anything to buy time. But she could see the truth in Mark's eyes, the quiet hurt and rage that no words could mask. He opened the envelope slowly, revealing several more receipts, small hotel keycards, and screenshots she hadn't deleted. Proof of every secret meeting, every stolen hour, every betrayal she had tried so desperately to hide. Dena's lips trembled. I can explain." Mark's hand shook slightly as he held the evidence. "Explain?" "Dena, this isn't just about a night out or a forgotten errand. This is about everything. Every lie, every betrayal. You've been living two lives, and I trusted you." Tears streamed down Dena's cheeks. She felt the weight of every choice crashing down on her. Ethan's promises of passion and escape, the excitement she once craved, now seemed shallow and meaningless against the devastation she had caused. I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered, her voice breaking. I felt alive with him. I didn't want to lose myself." Mark shook his head. "You've lost more than yourself, Dena. You've lost us, and no one can give that back." For the first time in years, Dena realized the magnitude of her actions. The perfect life she had once taken for granted was shattered, and nothing could repair it. Ethan was gone now, unreachable, a ghost of temptation she had chased at the cost of everything she held dear. Mark left the room quietly, leaving Dena standing alone in the dim kitchen, her hands shaking and her chest aching. The snow fell silently outside, mirroring the emptiness she felt within. She had wanted freedom, adventure, excitement, but all she found was the ruin of the life she once loved. As the door clicked shut behind him, Dena sank to the floor, the full weight of her choices pressing down. The web of lies had unraveled completely, leaving her with nothing but guilt, regret, and the bitter taste of betrayal. The American dream she had chased, the perfect life she had once displayed proudly, now lay in ruins around her, shattered by her own hand. And in that silence, she understood a painful truth. Some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed.